Trouble in Florida's real estate market. A lot of self-proclaimed investors are finding out that there's trouble on the sand. Let's talk to them in New York language that perhaps they might understand a little bit better. The bridge is over. These are people who thought they were investors and thought that their favorite YouTubers were freaking financial advisors. They got their information on investing from some stupid podcaster on the internet. And now they're finding out that their Naples investment, a lot of times purchased with somebody else's money because they're not real investors. They knew nothing about Florida, yet they decided to invest here, completely unaware of the realistic threats their investments would face, since they know nothing about Florida and got all their information from some stupid YouTube channel having podcaster. But reality is starting to set in with some of these morons, and we're starting to see even $100,000 price reductions. In the case of this particular property in Naples Park, a $600,000 price reduction, 160 days on the market. A lot of people are saying it's because of the interest rates, Jose, but that's not true. These people's stupidity started a long time ago. In Naples, Florida, a huge percentage of buyers are buying cash anyway, so interest rates are somewhat irrelevant when there's so much money moving in a place like Naples. A place where a house directly on the beach can easily go for over $100 million. So we're not talking about people who need a loan here. You're talking about people who have money. What they don't have is any freaking sense. So ma'am, where are you getting this information from? I've been watching a blogger on YouTube. He's got a lot of subscribers on his podcast, so he totally has to know what he's talking about. I'm telling you, these revenue insulting and barefaced bloggers that are out there are a freaking threat to stupidity that's out there. People who have money, think they're investors, think they know what the crap they're doing, but they're getting their information from somebody who recently moved here from New York themselves, and they don't understand anything about Florida. They don't understand about red tide, hurricanes, seasonal traffic to the state. They don't understand nothing. The only thing they understand is that they're compatible with the other stupid idiots who think they're investors. If his name is Mike Bordellini, he's probably a freaking tortellini. But of course, I'm not from New York. I don't have a freaking New Jersey Shores accent. So what do I know about investing in Florida, right? And it's true. I don't have millions of dollars, but I did spend 20 years of my life in Naples, Florida, working directly with some of the wealthiest property owners, contractors, and people who've been here for dozens of years, buying, investing, and making money off of this real estate market. When I had my junk removal service, I worked hands-on with a lot of individuals who were very affluent and very prominent in Naples. They didn't just move here from New York yesterday. I picked up a lot of game from these people. Most of my customers were living in $7 to $12 million mansions. And because my jobs were dealing with personal property, I was directly involved with these homeowners on a very personal level, working directly for them. I developed a personal relationship, and I learned a lot about real investing, real money, and real boss moves. So I don't have to rehearse pretending like I know what I'm talking about when it comes to these matters, like a lot of you have to do when you go meet your grandpa. If he only knew how stupid you really were. A lot of times they know how stupid you are. They can see right through your stupidity. But you're so good at kissing up to them, they put up with it. So what don't these people know about Florida's real estate market? Well, for one, they don't even understand the seasonality of South Florida, where we're empty half the year. And while for the first time ever, right after COVID, for some reason, we had a lot of people come here in the summer, and that could have offset these analytics they look at, because while they're looking at the information, what they don't understand is where that information is coming from and why there's been these changes. Things like COVID bringing people to the state of Florida, other things a little more complicated like the seasonality of the place, Take South Florida, where only during the cold winter months people come down here. Or along the Florida Panhandle, where in the summer people go to spring breaks, and warmer weather in the deep south attracts a lot of people to the Gulf Coast beaches. A lot of these hotels were up to $600 a day, and in the high season, a single night stay in these beachfront hotels can go for as much as $1,800 a night. During the summer month, when the prices are lower, we see tourism from South America come and fill up these vacancies, which helps these businesses along the coast that depend on the winter traffic survive during their worst summer months. Well, with SB 1718, a lot of those people will no longer be coming to Florida. I'm not sure if you've ever been to a beach in Florida, but let's pretend that a town is 20% Hispanic. If you find yourselves on a beach in Florida, you might notice that about 85% of the people on the beach are Hispanic. And if you talk to those people, they're usually on vacation from another region of the globe. It's not just affecting people who own hotels. Even people who metal detect on the beaches are telling me that ever since these people left, they're not even finding any gold on the beaches anymore. So what are some of these factors that are really leading to the real estate price drop? Since again, a lot of these buyers have a lot of cash money, and if there's a deal, they're going to buy it no matter what. A few pages on the calendar back, these properties at these prices would have been swallowed up immediately. But why aren't there buyers right now? It's the same property, it's the same price, now it's even less. But what happened to the buyers? In a city where you can get a house for $100 million cash, doesn't seem like a $200 price difference is going to change somebody's mind. Here's a few factors that your Jeff Bordini guy isn't going to tell you on his YouTube channel. For one, red tide, seasonality of Florida, which varies from place to place. Back-to-back hurricanes making hits like a Dominican baseball player. And a government misinformation campaign about the beauty of Florida that's now being unraveled on the internet. There was this one YouTube channel out there, I can't remember his name, but he was telling you guys something about insurance costs in Florida, the amount of fraud there is in Florida, how the entire freaking state is rigged up to benefit big corporations and insurance companies. And even though he was a 20-year veteran in Florida, he left the state because even he had enough of the hurricanes. So what makes you think somebody that's just moved here 3 years ago from New York, that's like New York, that's like New Jersey and New York combined, I don't know if you got that. Yeah, New York, a New Yorker. Yeah, if a real Floridian like myself has decided it's enough, what makes you think that these people from Colorado, New York are going to put up with this garbage? But despite my warnings now for many years telling you guys about all these things that are just now for some reason being headlined in Florida, but yes, I've been telling you these things forever. The only difference is now for some reason it's relevant. It's not like these are new factors in Florida. These things have been persistently happening in Florida. They're just now being exposed because of the timing of other things happening around the globe. So all of a sudden now, all these things that have been happening in Florida forever are now relevant. So now people are backing off of Florida, not because these problems are new. These problems have existed in Florida. But now for some reason, some Yo Dirt from New York looking YouTuber starts talking about it. And you guys are like, oh no, oh, we're gonna die. But these things have been happening in Florida forever, and I've been telling you guys these things. That's why I never really bought into this craziness of Florida real estate. It's booming. Oh, Florida real estate. Now it's busting. No crap. That's what this place does. If you remember back in 2007, 2008, Southwest Florida and Las Vegas were the most impacted real estate markets in the entire United States during that crash. What makes you think that things are better now? In fact, now it's even worse than ever. So no, it's not the interest rates. It's the compounding effect of people's stupidity, ignorance, and lack of knowledge about the reality of these Florida beach towns. And this isn't happening everywhere. It's happening in a few places, particularly places like Naples Park, where These vacation rentals have been going crazy for years. Possibly one of the most destructive forces to hit the state of Florida other than freaking pain clinics and SB 1718. Let's just scare away all of our tourists. No matter how bad Florida gets, in December and February when it's freezing cold up north, those people from up north are always going to pack Florida. But during the summer months, it's the Venezuelan, Colombian, Brazilian, the South American customer who's been keeping Florida afloat. Some of these people from countries like Venezuela are sometimes the ones buying those $100 million houses on the water. Venezuela's oil reserves are about 10 times the size of the United States oil reserves. When Latino buyers put their hands on real estate, they usually don't sell it for anything. They buy a $1 million home or a $10 million home, and that is where they're going to reside for the rest of their lives. When these people that are buying properties to invest in vacation rentals or buying homes with somebody else's money a lot of times, not their own money, the first little wave of fear, they panic and they sell. But these people that were buying homes in Florida to live for the rest of their lives, they had different intentions. The state of Florida has been scaring away families and scaring away Latinos to cater more to this group of elderly people who are also coming here to die in 5 or 6 years, so they're not holding on to these properties as much either. So Mike Ordinario's grandpa from New York moves down to Florida, and in 5 years he passes away because he's 85 years old. It's a miracle he hasn't passed away yet. Mike Ordinario Jr. has an addiction to ethamphetamine, so he decides that he's going to grab all that money from the real estate transaction and invest it into some new app that's going to make his real estate YouTube channel blow up. So he sells the house because he doesn't want it either. So the old people retiring to Florida have no long-term plans for the properties they buy. The people investing for vacation rentals certainly don't have any long-term goals for these properties. The only people who really had long-term goals for properties in Florida were people who were moving here from Latin America or people who had kids and families and were moving to Florida for the long term. But then they were like, oh, look at those schools over there. No. We're not going to put our children in those schools. No. So since Florida doesn't give a crap about families and children in schools, in fact, they're purposely trying to make their school system look as unappealing as possible because they don't want these families here. So if Latinos and families, the long-term purchasers of these homes, are not going to buy them, it means that everybody else on the market is a revolving doors. 3 to 5 years is a miracle if they last that long. So yeah, it's unavoidable that a market like Naples, Florida is going to unavoidably end up with a massive amount of real estate inventory because the old people are dying, the investors are getting afraid, and the families and people who would buy these homes to make long-term goals for their communities are not moving to Florida. They're terrified of Florida. So meanwhile, in California, they're not having problems selling $3 and $4 million houses. They're on the market for 11 days and they have buyers. So while in Florida right now things are sitting on the market, they're reducing the prices. In California, they've attracted families and they've attracted people who have long-term plans for their communities, which means that there's more inherent value in a house in California than there is in Florida. You see less inventory in California, higher real estate prices. It's a hot market in California right now where houses are pending immediately. They're not sitting on the market, stagnant in the market. They're moving. California has less overdose deaths. They have a better system in place to make sure that people have health and that people are going to have long, healthy lives. While in Florida, you're in the middle of a drug epidemic, the highest insurance claim rate in the entire country, more lawsuits than any other state. People in Florida are spiraling out of control with their addiction, and that doesn't take into account the racism that most Latino and Black families are facing in Florida, where they're so bold, they're open about it these days. A lot of minorities, like Asians in particular, flock to California because at least there, they don't have to deal with the bigotry, discrimination, and outright dangers of living in a southern state like Florida. Even now, a house in a bad neighborhood in Fresno, California is still more affordable than a house in a bad neighborhood in Sarasota, Florida, for example. So for the average person, prices in Florida have got so high that they're now encroaching on the highest real estate markets, places like New Jersey and California. Florida's real estate prices are now on par with places like California, but their incomes, their infrastructure, their long-term sustainability for development are nowhere near as good. And retiring people as well as investors are a revolving door. People who have families and children, they move to a state, they live there for a very long time. And in places like the South, minority families are even having to relocate simply because they're either being discriminated out of opportunities or simply it's become so dangerous for them that they've had to leave their homes. If they're a victim of a crime, law enforcement doesn't investigate that. Now you have gangs who just simply particularly target immigrants in the South because they know that law enforcement will not investigate them if they are the victims. Look, you don't have to like the truth, but the truth is that Florida has made it so unappealing for families that they're moving out or they're just not choosing Florida. And right now, while the market is becoming stagnant in Florida, the market's not stagnant in California. The houses are hitting the market. There's not a lot of inventory. Those properties are pending immediately, making California's real estate market now more attractive than Florida's. The largest ancestry group in the South is Black. The largest ancestry group in the Southwest is Mexican. So when you're in the southern region of the United States and you start to make laws like SB 1718, which discriminates Hispanics, and laws like what they've done to school systems that disrespect African Americans, you can expect that you're losing out on the vast majority of your fundamental real estate buyer, the real buyer, the family, the person who buys a home and thinks to raise children there. But Florida has chosen the route of making the real estate market a revolving door, which means that price fluctuations are going to be consistent. However, in the case of California, through the decades, they've been able to increase the real estate market because there's less unpredictable variables. California is the largest state by population, and their population would be much larger if their development practices were unregulated and out of control like they are in Florida. The state of California has really been able to control development. Unlike Florida, where they've completely destroyed the entire state with development, California hasn't allowed that. And that's why Las Vegas, Nevada was hit so hard in the last recession, because all the people that wanted to do all development in California, but they couldn't get away with it, went next door to Nevada, and they did to that market what's always been happening in Florida. But of course, you've been getting tossed around by Fox News, and you believe everything you hear on the news. But the truth is that it's those steady real estate markets, places that don't allow speculation development. Who do you think is behind trying to get people to flee California? It's developers. They have a customer in California, but they can't sell them their product in California. They got to get them to move to Las Vegas or Phoenix or Florida or Tennessee, a place where they can actually develop properties. It's the realtors, it's developers, it's lawyers who have a customer in California, but they're not able to screw over the person in California like they can in other states. And it's interesting that while we heard so much about people leaving the state of California, they left with equity, and there was no difficulty for those people leaving California to sell the houses they left behind. And now, as the entire real estate market is cooling down in Florida, we're seeing that California, their real estate market, is still kicking. And guys, I would like to announce that me and my wife Katie are moving to California.
You've reached Katie Rodriguez Ochoa, realtor with Keller Williams & Co. Please leave your name and number, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Have a great day.
At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hey Katie, I've decided that we're moving to California Forget about your real estate license here in Florida. It's not going to make us any money. We're moving to California, baby. Give me a call back. I wonder where the crap you are, too. Sent her to the bank, and she's been gone all day. Let me tell you, last time I made a decision like this without consulting her first, she was very irritable. Hey, women, where are you?
Hey, so I was recording a video when you called.
Oh, you're finally making a video. What are you trying to do, sell houses to people?
Yeah.
Listen, I don't want you to sell houses. We're moving to California.
Really? When are we moving?
You're excited about this? Florida's ever-revolving door of customers means that the state's going to struggle to have a strong real estate market. And in times of recession or other difficulties in the market, it'll be much more vulnerable. Single-family home prices may not drop dramatically in Florida, but in some places like Naples Park, where they're depending on vacation rentals and properties that are mostly related to tourism, you can expect prices to drop, prices to become stagnant on the market, and inventory to continue to increase. Florida's youth is starting to realize that there's no future here. There's no healthcare options. There's no sources of income that are good. There's really nothing in Florida that would hold a young person, especially those that are into remote work, to want to stay in this state, with a few exceptions like places like Orlando and Fort Lauderdale. So right now, we're not seeing the entire state of Florida struggle, but we're starting to see a few indicators that some of the investments that some people have done blindly with no knowledge on the state or its economy are starting to show weaknesses. I went to Naples Park Elementary School. I lived in North Naples for 20 years of my life. You couldn't convince me to pay $1 million for a house in Naples Park, but these people from other states who don't understand the place feel like they're knowledgeable enough to make $1 million investment into something they have no prior knowledge of. And I'm not saying that blind investments are not successful. A lot of times blind investments can make you a lot of money. However, in the long term, that's really not how you should invest your money. And unfortunately, these developers have attracted a demographic to the area that's made the area more propense to violence and more dangerous. These used to be retirement communities of elderly people retiring. These vacation rentals and young hipster people have brought drug addiction, crime, drunk driving, and a bunch of other problems to the area that never existed. And now we're even starting to see murders pop up in Naples, Estero, Northport. Places that didn't have these problems before are now starting to see a huge increase in their homicide rates. And if you guys remember the video that I made about SB 1718, I predicted that this new immigration law would bring about higher homicide rates, and we're already starting to see that. The city of Fort Myers, Lee County in general, has had homicides happening in places that have never even happened before. Estero, Florida, Pine Island. These are not the normal places that homicides take place. So if you remember my videos that I made about the new immigration law in Florida, I elaborated on how these new immigration laws were going to increase the murder rate for these Florida places. And we're seeing now exactly that. Take, for example, Bradenton, Florida. We saw 4 murders happen in just one small neighborhood. A small neighborhood that had a large Mexican-American population that left after this law took place. And the people that moved in did exactly what I predicted was going to happen. I even went as far as giving you a specific number. I mentioned that Florida's homicide rate for the second half of the year would likely reach 11 out of 100,000, about a 40% increase from previous years. And if you look at the news lately, we can see that happening very soon. So hey, you don't have to like what I'm telling you because it doesn't match your personal narrative on the way you see the world, but when you see the things I tell you happen exactly the way I predicted they would, based on my observations, you can get the idea that perhaps, whether you like my opinion or not, what I'm telling you is definitely something to consider. Sometimes these changes, while they may look attractive to people moving to the state, they really don't understand how horrific of an error they're making. The fundamental problem in Florida is that it's a revolving door of investors and people retiring, which means that there will always be a vast supply of real estate, especially now that developers are able to have larger percentages of the home sales. Since there aren't too many existing homes being sold, single family home construction has been halted by SB 1718, and now it's developers in these large planned communities who are going to have the overwhelming percentage of new home sales, leaving those single family homes, small projects, small developers. Those people are out of the market now. They're completely disadvantaged to larger projects because of laws like SB 1718. When I broke down the law when it first came out, if you guys remember, I mentioned how the segment that talked about the daily fines for people who violated E-Verify, anybody who had less than 25 employees would not be able to afford those daily fines. But a large developer who has 500 or 600 people working could definitely pay that daily fine and continue using illegal workers on their projects. So what we're seeing in Florida is that the little guys getting screwed over, and the big developers, again, are the ones that are really taking advantage of these new laws. These lines were almost designed to make it harder for me and you and easier for the big developers. But because they put a racial spin on it, they were able to get support from the people in Florida because racism sells and racism makes a lot of money. They're able to put a racist spin on this law. They're able to get support from the people, and they'll blindly support it. But if you pay close attention to the details of that law, it's just about destroyed most of the single home family construction projects that were leading to people like me and you to be able to afford a new home outside the grasp of the larger developers. These larger developers are going to have their own HOAs. So it's still going to be very difficult for people like me and you to get a single family home because the people that were building those homes are no longer able to stay in the market. But those large developers building those houses that me and you probably can't afford with HOA fees that me and you probably don't want, they're the ones now. They're going to have the largest share of the new home construction. Lawyers, realtors, developers, and insurance companies have Florida in a chokehold right now, and they're getting rich while people like me and you are screwed in every way possible. So don't think that right now these changes are going to directly affect you if you're looking to be a homeowner. We've also seen rent signs pop up in Tampa, Southwest Florida. This has become a normal thing now to see for rent signs, something that was impossible to find in Florida, let's say 2 years ago. We're starting to see things ease up a little. There's more vacancy. There's less demand for these types of properties. But what some of these so-called investors are going to find is that their vacation rental properties have absolutely nobody who wants them. So if you're looking to buy a normal home in a normal neighborhood or just looking to rent a place, it could get a little easier for you. But people who paid $1 million for a house thinking that they were going to have vacation rentals endlessly, now they're finding that their insurance rates are going up, their property taxes are going up, and they can't find people that want a vacation in Florida for various reasons, like hurricanes, red tide, and increasing inventory means that these properties probably were overvalued at $1 million. No crap. They failed to notice that both the vacation rental and the retiring person in Florida are nothing more than a temporary figure in the state's presence, and that people who need jobs, families, and schools and better public services are the ones who are going to be fixed in a place for a long time, restricting real estate inventory from getting out of hand. But we can expect in the future, places like Naples Park, perhaps a lot more signs out by the road. I remember in 2012, 2014, every single street in Naples Park, when you look down, all you saw were for sale signs. And it's that constant rotation of the people in Florida, the transientness of the state, that makes it very undesirable and quite unpredictable in the future. Will a lot of people come? Sure. Could they all disappear? Absolutely. And all that is fine if you had $1 million sitting around and bought a property to hold your money. But if you're one of these idiots who took out a loan thinking that their vacation rental was going to make them money, boy, are they in for a world of trouble. If it's not this little hurdle, it'll be the next one, but it's coming.